Yes, ma'am. She told me to look at my daughter. It's so funny. What is she back there doing? Look, she's a serious girl, especially when she's listening to her ABCs. Yeah, I know, right? It's so funny. Oh, ding ding. Yeah, she's looking back. Oh, y'all gotta see this. Is funny. It's ABCs, man. This is not a joke. That's what you call concentration and focus. 1 year old, man. 1 year old. Every day she does that. She sits in front of them ABCs and she doesn't budge. She doesn't move. She doesn't squirm around like her brother, like a worm on a hot plate. Man, we're all born with gifts, man. Namaste, first viewer. Thank you for joining me. Before I do these type of talks, I like to, before anybody comes in, just sit, breathe, meditate, and ask the bodhisattvas and Buddhas in all directions, in all levels of existence, to allow me, their brother, to be a bridge the gap between mundane and super mundane understanding. It's not easy because most people, 99% of people on the planet Earth, spend most of their time with mundane preoccupations. They spend very little time even dealing with what we would consider mundane, which is ordinary, daily. Super mundane would be what you would consider spiritual and metaphysical. Blazing, what's up? Blazing. Blaze one up for me, bruh. Blaze one up for me. Get that medicine in you. Get your mind right. Whatever your medicine is, ayahuasca, DMT, banana bean. What is the other one? Is it sage or cinnamon? uh, what's another one? The tea that makes you sleepy. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand the whole purpose of the shaman path and the relationship we have with plants. Because what human beings do inevitably is take every single thing. Nice. Green leaf, baby, from the earth, which is indistinguishable from any other plant in the field if you don't know what it does. So at some point, a medicine man had to go into the field, take this plant. Imagine the first shaman to take ayahuasca. I mean, he had no reference point, he had no background, he had no one before him that knew a damn thing about that plant. And unless he was on a very high level, intellectually, spiritually, that must have been a hell of a ride. That must have been a hell of a ride. I can't even imagine. But because of his skill level, insight, wisdom, fearlessness, you better have some of that if you're the first person to ever take ayahuasca. DMT, ayahuasca, D-lysergic acid. The first person that pops some morning glory seeds in their mouth and start chewing on them. Excuse me, because you got allergies out here. Oh man, somebody was the first group of people, the first person, however it played out. However it played out. There was a first, and there was no literature. Before we do ayahuasca now, we could read a book. Westerners, we want to minimize risk. We don't want to go in and have to worry about loss of life, limb, dismemberment, you know, morbidity and mortality. We just want to have fun. So we rightly use our knowledge to learn about certain things that we're not aware of before we go experience it. So I know when I go skydiving for the first time, which I've done, you might not want to do it if you got a bad heart. You might not want to do it if you're really afraid of heights. Yeah, I mean, every drug you take, somebody has researched it before they give it to you. They know the amount, they know the tincture, they know the effect it's going to have on you. You know, shaman, i.e., medicine men like myself, we don't use drugs the same way you guys do. Our intent and purpose is not the same as a lot of you guys. Our path is not the same because the shaman goes into that world like the first one that did it alone, by himself, herself, in order to bring back knowledge. The whole lessons about Prometheus with the Greek stories about when Prometheus brought mankind fire, the gods punished Prometheus. Remember the story? One of my favorite stories in Greek literature. And I am a Greek, and I took Latin for like 4 to 6 years. So I have something more than just a cursory interest in the Greek culture. That being said, Prometheus was placed on a rock, and a vulture ate his liver out every day, and it grew back. And apparently that was his punishment for all of time, for simply bringing fire to mankind. And fire represents light. Fire represents intellectual knowledge, intellectual insight. It also represents wisdom. It represents seeing what cannot be seen with just one level of the mind, consciousness, and having to master multiple levels of mind and consciousness before you can really truly speak on a thing with the words of wisdom or sage understanding. Okay? So I listen to my Christian brothers and sisters because I myself, Living Buddha, Living Christ is the name of this broadcast. And in celebration of Thich Nhat Hanh's fabulous work. Yeah, I know, eternal damnation. Here's the yeah, the Greek gods wasn't no joke. That because he simply brought but let's fast forward a few thousand years to the Western way of life, the European and African scholars and metaphysicians, and then we come up with the concept of the Garden of Eden. And the snake, Prometheus, once again brings knowledge to mankind, and mankind doing what mankind does with knowledge, whatever the fuck mankind wants, and it turns out good and it turns out bad. But the snake is punished because it says forevermore, if man sees your head, he's going to crush your head and you will damage his heel, if I remember the story correctly. Interesting about damaging the heel. When the heel is damaged, there is a tendon known as the Achilles tendon, also from the Greek story of Achilles. I love the Greek. I love the Greek stories. I'm sure I know way more Greek stories than African stories, but because they come from a similar source, I still get the benefit of that wisdom and knowledge. Once you damage someone's heel, yeah, I know, right? It seems that way, Blazing. But unless you have the understanding of the gods, you don't really understand. It's like when a parent is beating your ass. Maybe you consider it a real ass whooping until your best friend, who you fall out with at age 15 or 16, shows you what a real ass whooping looks like. Puts you in the hospital. Goes to fucking juvenile court because of how bad he beat your ass. After that, you look back on what your parents did and it's nothing. But until you have that experience of what a real ass whooping really feels like, forevermore you feel like your punishment is everything, right? Oh my God, how can my mom and dad be so cruel? They must be Satan incarnate. Why was I born? Why did you have me, mom? Why did you put me on this earth? I'm just telling you the things I used to think when I was a kid, when I was getting my ass beat. Okay? You have to look and recognize the processes that go on here at each step along the road. And going back, there's nothing wrong with that. Go back and look at how you thought. Know what it feels like. Feel it. Remember it. What it felt like to be 13, 12, 10, and receive an ass whooping, right? Because there's always a point of comparison. Things seem one way when you're at one place, and then when you get to the next place, you look back and go, oh, that wasn't so bad. Sisyphus, I don't know what Sisyphus did. He had to roll a rock up a hill for all eternity, and then it rolled back down. And then he had to go back to the bottom of the hill and push this huge ass boulder back up the hill again, and then they would roll back down again. That was his punishment for all of eternity. The Greek gods wasn't no joke, man. You just don't want to piss them off, you know. But don't forget a key points here. I don't know about Sisyphus, but if I'm not mistaken, uh, thank you, Julie Brewington, for subscribing to Ye Old Drunken Monk. Ye Old Drunken Monk, i.e., Black Loki, also known as. Oh, don't get me started, man. But yeah, the Greek gods definitely had no problem doling out punishment for any infractions that they perceived. Who was the one? Oh, you go to the Greek gods, they he got their payback, man. Zeus was known to take human form and walk amongst the people as a human being, as a man. And it's interesting, you know, that he would walk around and even give two shits about what human beings were doing. Aren't you a god? Why are you down here in the flatlands worried about me? Ain't you supposed to be up there in that big palace you got? You know, human made constructs and reflects the whole gambit of human traits, the goods, traits, possibly. But you got to remember one thing. I'm me being African. My ancestors practiced things like voodoo, went into trance states, and channeled the gods. And I just watched a movie about the Dalai Lama, and they have a tradition where their monks will channel gods, and the gods are the ones who told the Dalai Lama to leave Tibet that night, get out, and then somebody says, but the Chinese are blocking, and somebody said, just shut up. Go look at the movie. So person was like, man, look, the gods done spoke, bro. What you talking about? Fuck what the Chinese blocking. You think we care about that? The gods done spoke. This man went into trance, channeled, told you what the gods saw, and the Dalai Lama got the fuck out of Tibet using that level of information that came from a source that wasn't of this world. How many examples do we have of this? And how many examples do we have of somebody saying, but the Chinese are blocking the route? You know, teachers have to speak. If we don't speak, it's of no use for you to have a certain understanding of a thing that's based on truth and realization, and it not have some effect on the environment around you, the whole universe. When one iota of anything changes in this universe, the whole universe changes. And you ain't got to spend a whole lot of time nursing a headache trying to think about that. You just accept it based on where you're at. And some level of that truth above where your level of understanding is will slowly infiltrate into your being if you can simply sit with that truth. Be patient, accept it, because every point up until that point, you've looked at it scientifically and it has been truth, i.e., faith is required. Okay? Faith is not based on blind following of something that someone else has told you to be proof, but you yourself have never seen or experienced. That is not what faith is based on. It is based on the opposite thing. Okay? So, throughout history, there's always been a problem trying to describe ultimate reality. Ultimate reality, by its very nature, is something you cannot experience with just the five senses. And as since we recognized long ago that we had other faculties, certain cultures, tribes, peoples learned to use these other faculties faster than other groups of people learn to use these non tangible, non five sense faculties. And intuition is one word, but these faculties access and bring to light is so profound, so overwhelming, so infinitely, beautifully complex and fucked up at the same time that human beings have often, like, don't forget what the Buddha said when he came out of trance under the Bodhi tree. He did what the Dalai Lama did when the Chinese were sitting in front of him talking crazy. The Dalai Lama in the movie was silent. He sat there silent. That is a form of communication. Silence is a thing. Okay? Emptiness is a thing. And the Dalai Lama was using the appropriate thing in that moment when the Chinese generals were talking crazy to him about him being a communist and forgetting his faith. The last communist he talked to looked at him and told him religion was a poison. Now, we can't say that that man is wrong because there are times when religion is a poison. There are times when it is a balm, a medicine, right? The Buddha was a physician, right? He saw a condition. And a physician who sees a condition and comes up with an accurate diagnosis will have had to use knowledge, wisdom, and skill to come to that right diagnosis. It's not by happenstance and circumstance and accidental random statistical probability he stumbles across the true value of what is the Planck's constant or the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It took a hell of a lot more to figure those things out using earthly, carnal, material knowledge. So the things of a more abstract nature, exactly. But you got to understand what's happened here. Over the hundreds, thousands of years of us coming to this point, we have a huge, gaping, wide level of understanding about these things. Some of that is by design, some of it is by your own karmic circumstances that you created, not me. You created those circumstances. You're at where you're at because that's where you're at, and your decisions in this life, the previous life, the lives in between, and the ones to come are responsible for where you're at in this point. When you hear logic and truth, it's like drinking from a certain beverage. And your whole body is satiated. You know that feeling when you drink something and your whole being feels like ah satiated. And I don't need to tell you that you just drank something that was good for you, right? I don't gotta say to you that orange juice you just drank was very nutritious, very nutritious, and it was just good. There's actually no words that would fully describe the experience you have drinking that orange juice, freshly squeezed in Florida, right off the tree. Oh my God, all the seeds strained out for you in a cool glass under an orange tree in a Florida orchard on a beautiful spring day. Whoo, just sitting there enjoying your orange juice. And nobody understands it but you, right? But a lot of people drink orange juice, right? And they all come to a point where they can at least say, man, orange juice is good. You're using descriptive words because for two reasons. One, you were taught to use descriptive words. And two, you don't know that there's another way to communicate. If you don't know that there's another way to communicate, if you don't know German, you have to speak in English. If you don't speak English, you got to use sign language. And if you don't do any of that, you're going to bang on your head. You're going to bang your head on the ground, grunt, throw shit, grab things. You're still communicating, right? Each level of communication comes with certain circumstances for using that that level of communication. At the lowest level, i.e., also the highest level, you're creating discord in your environment. Okay, you're creating discord in your environment because I'm a modern human. Oh, you're modern, so you don't use the same hormones that your ancestors used millions of years ago. Yeah, you modern, all right. When you start using a different form of adrenaline and norepinephrine and what's another good hormone? Testosterone and progesterone. Holla at me. Then I'll say you modern. Until then, I'll just say your updated version of the same thing that you mean what you mean. I don't. I mean, I'm just telling you from my level of understanding. That's the problem is that we have to acknowledge different levels of understanding of a thing. See, this is the thing. When you come to me in the hospitals and you chopped off your fucking legs, I don't have to have this conversation with y'all because you don't know what the fuck to do to stop the bleeding and to make the pain go away. So you throw your arms up and you say, you know what? Because I believe in the agencies and the licensing organizations in my state. You have the skill. This is all interrelated. And if you can't figure out the interrelation, then you have to use the contemplative path. You have to use the contemplative path to put all the things that I'm saying together. The thing is that people at different places put things together faster. And there's so many points that we're interjecting in each thing that I say that it's impossible for me to communicate fully with words. Ah, now we're getting to the crux root core of the problem. Simply the realization that I cannot fully communicate with you with words, and there has to be another level of abstraction in reality that also conveys the meaning, point, purpose, and essence of those words is a necessary realization on the spiritual path and on the route of ascension as a human being to be the fullest expression of what you are or can be. Sorry, I got asthma, so I don't have no puffers or shit right now. So if I stop every now and then, to catch my breath. I'm one of those people that really don't like taking a lot of medicines. I could. Hey, ma, can I have some black tea when you get time? Thank you. Salamat. Yeah, I'll drink tea, stuff like that, man. I just don't really, you know, like taking a bunch of medicines, man. See, what y'all do in the West, man, is y'all want to be done with this conversation. Some of you don't, you enjoy it, but some of y'all want to be done with it. You want to get to the thing. The reason you want to get to the thing is because that thing in your mind you think will bring you that final level of satiation, satisfaction, happiness, joy, bliss, prosperity, and non-suffering. That is the fly in your ointment in the Western way of thinking. And the funny thing is that you were never taught that because your religions, like Christianity, came from the East, and all of this basic prerequisite knowledge before you can say that you are a learned sage was just understood. I mean, when Pythagoras went to the Egyptians to learn, there were certain levels of understanding that he had to have had, or he would not have been allowed into that school. Okay, what's happening now is we're all at these different levels, and so the sage is forced to have conversations that he may not want to, or he has to himself advance to a higher level to even be patient enough to have those conversations with odd infinitum numbers of sentient beings, human beings. Because the Bodhisattva vow says you'll have that conversation to infinity if necessary, if it helps liberate another human consciousness from the matrix. I think it starts in childhood when we're told stories and our elders to give us knowledge. Some kids, you have to tell them, Hansel and Gretel, you know, they shouldn't have been picking off that witch's house in the first place. That's called stealing. Okay? Some people you ain't gotta tell that to. They just intrinsically understand the story of Hansel and Gretel. They understand that when the witch came out of the house and snatched their young asses up and threw them into the little cages in her house, that on some level she wasn't completely wrong. But when you found out that she wanted to cook Hansel and Gretel and eat them for supper, that's when you made your final judgment, and you forgot about the fact that Hansel and Gretel were snatching food off her house. If I came to your house right now and started snatching tiles off of the outside of your fucking house, would you get a wee bit upset? Yeah, you would get upset. Okay? So explaining things of a spiritual, metaphysical nature in different cultures, different languages, different tongues, it's like that. You got Hansel and Gretel's level of understanding, the witch's level of understanding, and then everybody from the outside watching what's going on from each different perspective that they're watching it from, their level of understanding. And everybody is saying something fucking different. But they're not saying anything different. They picked the food, they ate it. She snatched their ass up, threw them in the fucking dungeons, and she prepared a hot kettle of water to boil their young asses. That's what we all agree upon. But that's not all that's going on. Okay? Hansel and Gretel left their home. Something was going on at home, so they had to run into the woods. Don't forget the rest of the story. The parents said, hey, if I remember, it was the lumberjack dude with the axe. Their father, I haven't heard this story in decades and decades, the whole story. And he put Hansel and Gretel, kids don't play in the woods and get lost. See? It's dangerous, typical fairy tale, originally to scare kids into behaving well. But that's not all it was for. See, this is what y'all do in the West. when you say typically fairy tale, originally to scare kids into behaving well, I know you don't necessarily mean like that's it, end the conversation. But what's implied sometimes in communication with Westerners is that you're not saying this, and I'm not saying you particularly, blazing blasphemer, but why are you having this conversation when there's nothing more to say? And you're taught to think like that. Because you're taught you want to get to the let's get to the meat. Let's get to the let's get to the VIP room. Let's get to the VIP room where I can just like, okay, now we cool. It would take me an infinite amount of time to say what you're leaving out. I would basically be talking for all of eternity. Okay? I recognized that a long time ago when I studied science, philosophy, religion. I recognized that you better get God's cliff notes and you better have a lot of time to sit there and read them. There's a saying in the East that to understand everything about anything is to understand everything. Well, how many things are there? Last I checked on the number line, a point can be divided into an infinite number of points. When I say something that's not true, stop me and correct me. That's how we do it in the East. There's there's no problem with ego exercises. I need the ego to be it's the opposite. Less to be so that I can have more. See, the whole first part of my talk, Blazing Blasphemer, was about Hansel and Gretel. So if you didn't know that perspective of the story that I spoke on earlier, then that's one ray of light that you were missing from an infinite number of rays radiating from the point. Right? Infinite number of rays radiate from any point that is a source, that is a radiant energetic point that can radiate energy. Right. All right. The correlations that are made in mathematics and philosophy with reality and ultimate reality are not meant to be the last thing that's said on it. And often, after we've said 20 or 30 things on it, we've already lost 99% of the students already. So silence has to be one of the greatest teachers, a main source of teaching, yin energy, as opposed to yang energy. Because we learn so much in silence for different reasons. It's a medium through which information can travel, the blackness of space, right? Through which a lot's going on right now. Supernovas, quasars, planetary systems, galaxies, dark energy, all going on out there. So what looks to be empty to the untrained mind has a lot going on in it. And emptiness on the most basic level that we can describe it at metaphysically. Yeah, black holes, thank you. Brown dwarfs, brown dwarfs before they get to black holes. I mean, the variety of what's out there in that blackness is mind boggling. And the amount of time we would have to spend with each just black holes is a lifetime of work. Anybody ever heard of Stephen Hawking, Leonard Susskind, Schwarzschild? Each one of these men dedicated their life to just studying black holes and the phenomena surrounding black holes, like brown dwarfs, white, white dwarfs, Steve Carroll. And this just, we talk about black, empty ass space, empty space, darkness, blackness. How much knowledge comes out of nothingness? comes out of darkness. I mean, but the metaphysicians and philosophers speak on it in a different way, so that one reason they do it is so that the connections can be made. They articulate it because they know that without, first of all, you already know when you're a philosopher, probably most human beings are not going to understand a goddamn thing you're saying about most of the things you're talking about. Yet you choose to become a philosopher. Okay. No different than choosing to become a physicist, choosing to become a chemist. You don't have conversations about what you spend most of your time doing with most of the human beings that you come in contact with. Albert Einstein was good at explaining things to lay people. Go get his lay book on special theory of relativity. When he talks about simultaneity, describes simultaneity as being one of the factors that leads us into deeper insights into the nature of time, space, matter, energy, and dimensions. And that was just Einstein coming from one perspective. What if I wanted to start with something other than simultaneity? It's been done. We describe the universe using thermodynamics. We describe it using relativity. We describe it. We describe it using Newtonian kinematics, the old Newtonian model. We describe it using abstract models that come from people that are not physicists or scientists. They may be medicine men from different culture. They might be shamans. Yet and still, they are using the scientific methods. They are using evidence-based methods to get at truth. If 100 shaman from one tribe all drop ayahuasca and all have a similar experience, but slightly different each time, then they sit with that the same way the Christian monks and Buddhists do in contemplative thought, which is mostly silence. And then the knowledge and wisdom and the building of bridges between the concepts that happens as a result of that work. That work takes time. That work takes certain gifts. That work takes certain basic knowledge and wisdom, because I'm comparing this to that. Apples to oranges, pears to mountain lions. And so without the base knowledge, right, I wouldn't be able to make the comparisons. We've come a long way to develop better methods, tools. You can develop all the tools you want. A hammer is built from iron and steel molecules. The building blocks for the tools to not understand and be able to recognize their place in relation to the thing that they're helping bring into our existence or into our awareness is ignorance. As simple as that. It's as simple as that. You know what you guys want is you guys want your sages in this society to you know what you want. You know what you want. But the thing is that they can't, because after you uh after you learn to see reality from a different perspective, a broader perspective, you have an obligation to either speak the truth of what you saw, or you can lie about it and pretend to be something else to make everybody happy. Oh, it's just an apple. It's got nothing to do with the black hole. Ha ha ha. I was just joking. That's what a lot of y'all do, except you do it with yourself. Lying to yourself is the greatest pitfall a human being can perform. Because what happens is, as we talked about earlier in Ed's broadcast, doors get shut, pathways disappear, right? Realizations go away. Hell blossoms from rose blossoms, emerges from bliss, and it does that via a process. Not looking at Prometheus' story from different perspectives as a contemplative is a choice brought about by an ignorance, brought about by, right, attachment and aversion, man. The philosophy is the same. It holds whether I'm talking about it from physics or Buddhist metaphysics. It doesn't matter. I could talk about attraction and aversion in relation to an electron and a proton, plus and minus. I could talk about it from the standpoint of yin and yang, but we're still talking about the same concept. But some of y'all need that said. That's called spoon feeding, right? Because you didn't want to take the time to sit with the thing contemplatively. Now, the most important thing that you sit with is yourself and all of your bullshit, all of your ego-based bullshit, your emotions, the poisons of the mind, the kleshas, anger, attraction, and aversion, right? Pride, ego, anger, okay? If there is any component of that in an exchange between two sentient beings, the exchange, when it is perceived by either or, will not be what it is. It will be what's called filtered. It will be changed. It will be altered by the perception of the receiver and the sender, both. Okay? This is one of the greatest obstacles in modern science, religion, theology. I mean, when the Hermetic principles state very clearly that the first principle is that everything is mind, that should be the source of humility, love, altruism, patience, understanding. The realization and contemplation of just that first Hermetic principle, when it's done by a human being that is coming at it as a child, as a lowly adept who understands that he has an infinite amount of time and information to absorb, and that he will always be as a child. And the moment he forgets that, he, she, it forgets that, what ensues from that point on is called distortions and alterations of mind, ignorance. And we can laugh about it, but I hope the laughing comes from a point of realization, because there's two kinds of laughs. There's infinite types of laughs, but two types of laughs that we have in the Western mindset. One is a laugh of, that's bullshit, and I don't have to worry about it because it doesn't include me. And the second type of laugh is, I'm 100% a part of that completely whatever type of system you're discussing. And the laugh is a partially verbal form of communication that we use all the time. Even as I sit here and smirk like this, there's a form of communication going on. And you would have to sit and contemplate it if you haven't experienced it or communicated. But once you say the word car enough times in English, eventually you understand how to say it and you understand the concept. Nonverbal communication, nonverbal ways of interacting with ultimate reality is no different. You have to understand that there are no discontinuous nihilistic places in reality. Everything has some connection. That's why we say the threads of karma are incomprehensible. When we say that, yeah, but comprehensible is a concept that comes from a certain level of consciousness. It doesn't mean it's nothing. I didn't say the threads of karma are nihilistic or nihilism. I didn't say that because my being at its core root realization of self can't say that. So when I imply that with my ignorance or my words or my actions, I'm being dishonest. And I'm being dishonest on a level that I'm aware of, and I'm being dishonest on a level that I'm not aware of. And that is the danger of ignorance as opposed to wisdom. That is the danger of anger as opposed to patience. That is the danger of attraction and aversion as opposed to just being, right? Just being. Just accepting, saying, I am that I am. But to really express I am, it comes with a certain level of understanding that is based on work, insight, contemplation, meditation, on the concept of the I. You cannot have the am before you have the I. If that I be whole, you know, then your being will be full of light. Isn't that what the verse says? If thine eye be whole, I'm paraphrasing it. If thine eye be whole, your whole being shall be full of light. If your eye is not whole, your whole being is not full of light. But he didn't have to say that because it was implied in the sentence. But it was not stated. So every time you read something, there's a whole lot of other things being said that are not stated. All right? A soft nihilist, I believe in that. Some of you guys confuse nihilism with this other concept that can't be stated. The funny thing about nihilism is that we can't even conceive of that concept because you would literally have to become nothing. And then there would be no more conversation taking place. Okay, so we're being naive if we think that we truly understand the concept of nothingness. Simple as that. The best we do in Buddhism and Eastern philosophy is say Taoism is say nothing is simply a description of something at its best at this level of understanding. The Buddhists would say to truly understand emptiness, you have to become emptiness, and that's what I just said from a non-Buddhist perspective. Wisdom is what it is. Insight is what it is, right? It's not just one culture, just one system of thought, just one academic, viewpoint that brings about a full understanding of this reality, because it can't. It's impossible. The humility is automatic. It doesn't have to be beat into somebody. But the European way, sometimes the humility is not automatic. Let's beat it into them. And I'm sure my African ancestors did that too. I'm sure my Arabian brothers, participated in some of that. Nobody's hands are without blood. But the thing is that we're bleeding ourselves in each moment, right? Suffering. We're bleeding ourselves in each moment. And we don't understand where the blood loss is coming from. And we don't know where to get that transfusion from, right? So we simply continue to bleed. And the death that is spoken about in the Christian sense It's not just a physical death. And any Christian worth his or her salt would know that. We're not talking about just a physical death that takes place from lack, from ignorance. Okay? Peace and love are a result of things that are like them on a continuum. If they aren't like them on a continuum, it won't reach the other thing on this continuum, love and peace. It will lead to something else. Therefore, the litmus test, as the sages know from all of time, is always peace and love. Okay? Like attracts like, I've heard it say. But when we talk about like, there is a like that is intangible, incomprehensibly complex. We attempt to access it with things like Kabbalah, physics, philosophy. Mathematics, ooh, comes really close, but nope, you two fall short, brother. Sorry. You fall short because before you picked up your pencil, your paper, your papyrus, you understood that though the threads of karma are incomprehensible, you know, I vow to touch them all. Paradox is stated. Paradox is stated in the vows before the endeavor is undertaken, so we all know where we're at. It's kind of like all the hunters before they leave the camp coming to an agreement. Okay, this you will get that much meat if we kill an elk, and you're gonna help pack it out, right? Okay, you got your gun and your bullets. Don't point it at me, right? Okay, we all understand this. Now let's go hunt. When you're hunting wisdom, same thing needs to happen. The basis for the endeavor needs to be understood before the endeavor is undertaken. Otherwise, the only thing that ensues is ignorance and suffering. And the source of the ignorance and suffering is not understood, which perpetuates the cycle of ignorance and suffering. The foundation, the undertaking at its root, was not understood, was not honored, The vow didn't take place. It didn't take place. Okay? And because it didn't take place, the journey ended up where it inevitably had to end up in a place you are not familiar with, i.e., lost, which the Christians talk about. Living Buddha, living Christ. Okay? That's what it's about. Living Buddha, living Christ. Knowledge is knowledge. Wisdom is wisdom. I am that I am. If thine eye be whole, your whole being will be full of light. If it ain't, get prepared to run into some trees and rocks and pianos while you navigate the terrain. You can navigate it. It's just infinitely more difficult. So, if you give it to them before they're ready, if you utilize it before they're capable of understanding it, it's just another form of ignorance. So, you need to be put on a rock and have your liver eaten every day to even come close to the punishment you deserve. See? You cannot think with your normal carnal mind when you try to access this knowledge of the ancients. Because what you're going to see is just wax on, just wax off, just good, just evil, just up, just down, just left, just right, just I, just am, right? It's like letting the toe teach toe lessons and acknowledging that I'll have lessons to be learned from my toe. Because how is it any less important to my being than the top of my head? Okay? If you build a being in existence from root to crown, do I have to state? It is implied non-verbally. There is no crown without the root. Therefore, the crown and the root are equal. Okay? That is what we call nonverbal communication. It is implied with an infinite number of other statements I can make about the crown and the root. And when I say infinite number of statements, I mean infinite number of statements. Okay? I appreciate task at hand before leaving hunting camp. Right? State the nature of the thing before endeavoring to understand the thing itself. Oh, the nature of the thing can't be stated. Silence. Yan. Yin. The source of wisdom. You know, this way of teaching, the way I'm teaching now, is ancient way. Okay? It's an old way. It's the way I was taught by my ancestors and my sages and my teachers who aren't all of this on this plane of existence with me, but they're also not on a plane of existence that I cannot access. Right? It talks about in the Christian sense, learning from spirit. Unless you can learn from spirit man as well as carnal man, you cannot learn the things, the wisdom that is available to you. Trying to circumvent that and make exceptions for it is just another form of ego, attraction, aversion, envy, and pride. The poisons and kleshas that obscure the mind and that obscure our progress or what direction we need to go to progress. Where are the doors? Where are the keys? What is the key? Do I recognize the key when I see it? That means that I've built the thing properly from its inception, which I was a part of, to where it is now. If you want to build with breaks in your bridge, ponds, it's not possible. The bridge will fall. Do I need to state that? It's called nonverbal communication. Communicating on a level of our existence that cannot be stated in every moment. I can't state infinity in each moment. Infinity is in each moment. So the physical, the metaphysical, academic, spiritual language is the same. Is the same. The sages that walk this earth know this, and they don't have to state it because it's already stated. Because they speak the language of the non-spoken. They speak the words that can't be spoken. They realize the realization that can't be realized. So it's a process. It's a process. Living Buddha, living Christ, living Christ, living Buddha. the first teaching I got on Buddhism, I don't even know where it came from. It actually came from my father as a child. I didn't have a heart attack. My coronary arteries are 100% clean. They did do a heart cath on me. I had no cholesterol plaque, atherosclerotic plaques in my coronary artery. So I did not have a heart attack. A lot of times y'all think I think some people think I'm being a smartass, and I'm not. I'm not. I'm simply communicating the way I was taught to communicate by my teachers. And I miscommunicate stuff all the time through my emotional communication, intellectual communication, and through my knowledge of languages that is incomplete. And so we all do it, you know. But some people would get upset if you told them they had a heart attack and they hadn't ever had one. They will say, "Why are you putting that on me? I've eaten a vegan diet my whole life. Why would you even think I would have a heart attack?" But that would be their own ignorance for them to get angry at that. You know, they would obviously misunderstand your intent, which I don't. But we need to understand from the other perspective, right? Answer to your question is, yeah, I drink caffeine, but not large amounts. Tea, 1 cup of tea. What exactly happened was a cardiac arrhythmia. An electrical storm in my heart took place for unknown reasons that no cardiologist can tell me, nor can I completely myself penetrate. And there's a lesson there. Even when we're doing good, we don't know how we did it sometimes because we don't know the source of the problem, right? But our intention is altruistic, loving, caring, right? So I had what's called an arrhythmia with an athletic heart. But my friend John Ellis, I told y'all the story about John Ellis. He was a black doctor who climbed Mount Everest, and he's in the history books for African American athletes. He walked onto the Olympic team as a runner. He died from a heart condition. 50% of African Americans have it. 42 to 47% African Americans, roundabouts those numbers, have 1 to 2 heart diseases, heart ailments, pathological conditions affecting the heart. Men have a little bit less than women in the African American community. So look to your left, look to your right,